Thanks to all the hardworking drivers across the U.S. from the Allen Len Company.
Rules, no matter how well-intentioned they may be, they have to be workable.
Welcome to Trucking with OOIDA. I'm Ashley Blackford.
And I'm Scott Thompson. Ashley, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
It is going great. I'm doing fine, and I'm doing especially fine because here in literally about 30 seconds, we're going to have Todd Spencer of OOIDA. We're going to have Adrienne Gildea of CVSA. She's the Deputy Executive Director there, talking personal conveyance. If you've been following this issue at all, CVSA has, I think, 2 times before, 2020 and 2022, petitioned FMCSA to sort of put some better defined rules in place for personal conveyance. This is something, obviously, that is very important to a lot of folks out there.
For sure.
So we thought might be a good idea to get Adrienne on the line to talk about CVSA's stance on this. And then Todd will talk about OOIDA's stance and maybe a little bit of pushback. We'll see where they see some common ground. We'll see where they don't see eye to eye. So looking forward to this conversation. It will be coming up right after this very short commercial break. So the idea here, again, is to get a better sense of where we're coming from with regard to personal conveyance and CVSA's efforts to provide some better defined rules, which we're going to get into here, Adrienne. I do want to start with you, though, and let's just start with CVSA's stance, or I guess viewpoint, on personal conveyance, because this is an issue that you've all got some concerns about, right?
Yes, absolutely. So essentially, we started kind of paying attention to this issue back in 2018 after FMCSA issued the guidance that allowed use of personal conveyance while late, in which the organization was in support of. But what we started to see were drivers using PC to extend their drive time, and then just a general kind of misunderstanding or confusion about what is and is not personal conveyance. So that's kind of where the topic started, and we started paying attention, and we started to see, a decrease in 11 and 14-hour violations and a corresponding increase in false logs. We started getting anecdotal notices from our inspectors saying, hey, I found this driver using CC to do this and CC to do that. And so, we just started paying a bit more attention to it. We petitioned the agency in 2018. They denied for asking for more data. We petitioned again in 2022 with a little bit more data. We had asked them to create a violation code specific to personal conveyance. And again, they denied it, just saying, hey, we need to make a stronger case here, which is totally reasonable. And so then we did a data collection in 2023, and that's really when our thinking on this started to change a little bit. We were looking to see if there's a correlation between misuse of PC and safety performance. I think we found a bit of a correlation there, but what we also found is that people really don't understand this regulation because of the way that it is written. We found that 40% of the time, 38, but roughly 40% of the time, drivers are using it incorrectly. And so clearly there's a lack of understanding about how it is supposed to be used. And we, our organization feel strongly that the regulations have to be clear and enforceable. The regulated entities have to know what's expected of them and what they need to do to comply. And we have to know what it means so we can enforce it. And so our new petition that we're working on right now, we are still seeking a cap on personal conveyance to kind of limit the ability to misuse it to extend the driving day. But we're also seeking 5 or 6 clarifications from the agency just so that folks better understand what is and is not personal conveyance and when it can and cannot be used.
Yeah.
Todd, I'm curious, OOIDA's stance on this. Where is the association at?
One, personal use is personal use. And of course, from my perspective as a trucker, the only times I was ever an over-the-road trucker, I was driving my own vehicle. So, and I kind of figured every time I used it, it was personal. But having said all that, I think we kind of got at least what I had in mind here, I think we kind of got the horse out, or the carriage out in front of the horse, in that, Adrienne, I've been involved, OOIDA has been involved in CVSA since shortly after it was formed, and that's been a whole lot of years ago now. And I can tell you how and why, but, I'm sitting here thinking most people in the trucking community don't really understand what CVSA is and what it does. And if you would be so kind of explain that so somebody that's running up and down the road that that has to comply with all the regulations. Tell us all this stuff, how all this stuff works. Could you please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So CVSA, we are the kind of technically we're an international nonprofit. We represent the truck and bus inspectors in North America. The reason we exist is to help standardize the inspection procedures and enforcement procedures out there. We were formed back in the 80s, and it was a collaboration of industry and enforcement that came together and said, hey, a truck being inspected in California should be the same as a truck being inspected in Oregon. And we're getting a lot of different interpretations of the regs, and inspections are different. And I'm getting inspected every time I enter a new state. And it was a waste of resources for the states. And it was, an impediment to industry. So the groups out there out west came together and formed the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance and established the North American Standard Inspection Program. And so CVSA exists today to maintain the North American Standard Inspection Program, which is the process by which inspectors apply the federal regulations, roadside and compliance reviews and all of that, to make sure that the drivers are, qualified, the vehicles are maintained, that the motor carriers are doing everything they're supposed to do. So we maintain that North American Standard Inspection Program. We maintain the certification standards for inspectors and help deliver the training to make sure that they're being trained consistently and they are applying the regulations consistently. So when I mentioned earlier, one of our kind of concerns about the personal conveyance regulation and the language around it is it's kind of sometimes it's contradictory if you go read the Q&A in the regs itself, and there are a lot of terms that aren't defined, and there's a lot of lack of clarity, which leads to different interpretations from inspector to inspector is what is reasonable, and it can lead to different interpretations from driver to driver and motor carrier. There are some motor carriers who don't let their drivers use personal conveyance because it's so murky. And so, that's why we were formed and why we exist. We maintain the inspection procedures, and we do that with input from industry. You guys are members, and you guys are great members and very vocal and very helpful, and we value that contribution. We've got the federal regulators involved, too, to tell us kind of what they mean by the regulations sometimes. And our goal is to come together and form a program that everybody understands and can be applied consistently and effectively. And that's the other thing that we do is we view ourselves as a forum, right? We bring together the industry, the drivers, the companies, the suppliers, the manufacturers, with the inspector community, with the data people, with the federal regulators to try and kind of, troubleshoot the regulations as we go along.
Yeah.
Hey, really good elaboration on CVSA. The only thing I suppose that I would think that should be mentioned, does CVSA write regulation?
No, sir, we do not. We make recommendations to FMCSA through petitions and things like that, but FMCSA and PHMSA, obviously, are the regulating agencies.
Sure. And so the role for largely CVSA is basically, I'm going to say oversee or coordinate with the law enforcement community to hopefully see that the rules are applied fairly and accurately, and that, hopefully at some point they make sense.
Yeah. And I think a really good example is the federal regulators say that the engine has to be maintained, right? And the engine has to be functioning in a vehicle, right? But, most of the regulations were written for diesel vehicles, right? And so once you start having other types of engines out there in the world, we have to figure out what does a broken electric engine look like, right? What are the components that have to function? And how is it supposed to work? And so we bring in the electric vehicle engine folks, or maybe it's some other form of, combustion or whatever it is. But whenever a new component or something comes out onto the market, we have to say, when is this broken? And we bring in the experts on it. And then we, tell the inspectors, this is how you inspect that new thing. And so that way they're doing it consistently and effectively and applying the regulations correctly.
Now, we've got the cart behind the horse now, I think, for the most part, Todd.
Maybe. I'm going to say sure. We have, and again, an excellent explanation.
Yeah.
OOIDA's role. We've been I used to joke, and it's absolutely true. OOIDA has been a member of the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance longer than some of the states have, and the rationale for that was always, it was really simple from our perspective because, you mentioned the same trucks being inspected in every state. And that would happen with our guys quite often because owner-operators primarily, they would be singled out for inspections, whereas fleet trucks weren't. And, if you don't mind getting inspected once in a while, but when you're inspected in every state, that's over the top. And it's frustrating for drivers, but it's also a waste of resources to do the same thing. So we were always big supporters of the decal program, and through the years, and again, you mentioned the '80s. That's how long ago this thing's been going on. We've periodically been frustrated over when decals are applied and when they're not, and I can remember one instance of a state making, and I used to attend all the CVSA meetings myself. I did that for over 20 years. And one state saying that we're not applying them because we don't have them and didn't have a budget for them.
Yeah.
So I offered to go out to the toll booth at toll gates and take up a collection for them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we try to find creative ways to motivate folks.
Yeah, problem solving at its best.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I can remember once upon a time challenging one state to actually prove that they participate in CVSA by anything that they do because they weren't putting on decals. Again, it's some of the simplest things that sometimes can be so frustrating. But having said that, if they have the means to communicate, to share a message, and again, these are all cooperative efforts, so we want to cooperate. Just want to make sure things everything works as well as it possibly can, recognizing that we're all flawed people doing the best we can.
Yeah, we all got room for improvement, right? And again, that's one of the things that we try and do is we do ask that our industry partners come and tell us where we're getting it wrong, and we try and address that through training. And hey, is it the regulations need to be clarified so that we're all on the same page? Which again, that's kind of what we're trying to do here on the personal conveyance side, because we're seeing, like I said earlier, like 40% of the time it's being used incorrectly, and that I think we can all agree clearly there's something missing. And not trying to get rid of it. I mean, we definitely want personal conveyance to be there. It's just we want to make sure that we understand how it's supposed to be used and that the drivers understand how it's supposed to be used so that we can all kind of be on the same page.
Todd, I think you bring up a great point because there are a lot of issues in trucking, just generally speaking, where there are groups who see eye to eye on certain issues. They do not see eye to eye on different issues. And you brought up a good point that there are a lot of issues in which you do see, the association does see eye to eye with CVSA on. This is one issue, again, personal conveyance. And Adrienne, I think you laid out the reasons there pretty well for why, your group is looking to maybe clarify some of the rules that are out there because you're seeing maybe a little bit of confusion. And you mentioned that was one of the roles that the Alliance plays there. Todd, just from your perspective, though, on this, and you touched on it, but I'd like you to elaborate if you could, because you're speaking on behalf of the truck drivers out there who, as we know, are facing so many regulations. You talked about some of the issues there earlier. But when it comes to this issue in particular, personal conveyance, where does the association stand? And I guess what issue would you take with maybe CVSA sort of looking at this issue and looking to put in some better defined rules?
Well, I guess I'd say I have absolutely no problem at all with better defined rules.
Sure.
I guess, where some of the discussion would take place is, well, what are those rules? And realistically, a couple of things come into play here. Adrienne mentioned it, is that, there are interpretations that come from the agencies, and there are interpretations or decisions that come from carriers for their drivers. And one of the most craziest that, in my opinion, or I guess maybe just short-sighted rule is to say, well, we don't permit personal conveyance. Well, there aren't many drivers that drive over the road that aren't going to be in a situation where at times the vehicle has to be used for a personal purpose.
Of course, yeah.
And then, of course, there also is kind of an issue that probably motivated the recent changes in personal conveyance more than anything else, is that for the past, I don't know how many years now, but this goes back into the Obama administration, that both Mr. Johnson, when he was still president here on this earth, he and I would never go to FMCSA without mentioning the fact that every day since the advent of the 14-hour workday, every single day there are drivers that run out of hours sitting at a loading or unloading dock. It happens every single day.
Yep.
And they're out of hours. What are they supposed to do? They can't stay there. They have to go somewhere. And rules, no matter how well-intentioned they may be, they have to be workable.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, that's why we have to have personal conveyance. If you want people to comply with regulations, the regulations have to be written in a manner that they can.
Yeah.
And as long as we have drivers that are basically run out of hours at shippers and receivers, then there's got to be a way for them to move. Now, that doesn't mean run half a trip, but it does mean it's got to allow for them to go someplace. And, the issue we have with putting a cap on that is it all depends on where you are, how far you have to go. This was an issue that my participation in the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee, this was an issue that the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee looked at and discussed at length. And this is where a lot of the changes came about. The change that, the old rule said you had to be unladen. What difference would that make? Mm-hmm. Whether you're loaded or not loaded? Because you can't just, you can't dump a load. So it's got to go. It's got to go with you.
Right.
So they changed that, and I thought we made a lot of progress, a lot of discussion, and FMCSA obviously used some of the results that came out of those discussions to get where we are today. And again, the issue that we have with putting a cap on that is that, maybe that works if there's something just down the road a little bit ways. And, but if it's a long ways, and I have to say a long ways, maybe within 100 miles, you ought to be able to find something. The provision that you can't be, that you can't use it to, I'm going to say, advance a load or go in a direction where the load would be going. If that's the closest place to find a safe place to stop and rest, well, then it's only common sense that you go that way.
Yeah.
And, and the dilemma, and, which Adrienne talks about they're grappling with, is that how do you define what's reasonable and address issues that, that maybe issues where the rule is being taken advantage of. And, we look, most recent data I saw showed that last year there were 23,000 violations written for personal conveyance, 23,000. Now, out of all of trucking, that's probably not very many.
Right.
Having said that, that's still quite a few. So how do we get to where, Adrienne, we have rules that we can enforce, but also, we address the scenario that it was designed for?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And Todd, you're bringing up a lot of the stuff that we want to have some clarification on in our petition, because again, we want to make sure, we want to make sure the drivers get where they're going safely, and we want to make sure that the rules are rules that they're able to comply with in a safe and, livable manner. But we've got a situation what does enhancing operational readiness mean? Your example of the direction I need to go is west, but my load's also going west. So if I go west to find a safe place to park, am I enhancing operational readiness? Or am I operating a personal conveyance to find a safe place to park? And I think hey, I want to go grab some food, right? But the restaurant that I want to grab my food at, is 10 10 miles down the road west and my load is 10 miles down the road west? Am I supposed to go 10 miles back the road east to go to the truck stop back there just to make sure that I'm not enhancing operational readiness? That's not practical, but
No.
depending on who you talk to, they might, differing opinions, right? And so the idea is that we would like to have some clarity on the term enhancing operational readiness and what it means so that we all know what it means. And I think, if FMCSA were to act on our petition and publish a notice, and that will give you guys and your members an opportunity to make your explanations and cases and give your scenarios and for examples and get them into the mix and everybody else and give the agency the information they need to kind of draw some clear lines in the sand here so that everybody knows what is appropriate. And I think the other thing that we grapple with is that, there are the published Q&As in the regulations, right? Question 26 and 395.8 is the acceptable uses and non-acceptable uses. And we also get emails from FMCSA, and when we ask questions and motor carriers, ask a question and they get a direct answer from the agency that can sometimes be in conflict or questionable, or we don't really know what it means. And so we'd love to just make sure that we all are on the same page and we understand. Yard moves is a great example, right? Yard moves was one of the frequently cited reasons for personal conveyance. And sometimes it's proper and sometimes it's improper based on what they mean by yard move. The term's not defined anywhere in the regulations, right? It just says that, yard moves is an allowable use of personal conveyance. Inspectors have asked the agency, what do you mean by yard moves? And they said, it's a move on private property, not open to the public, but we also see it being used at truck stops and to reposition and things like that. And so, and folks, the thing here is that, there are, in all industries across all boards, you're going to have a bad operator or two, somebody who's genuinely breaking the rule on purpose and knows it. But that is the minority. We think that in general, folks are not using personal conveyance correctly because they don't know what it is. People who are coding personal conveyance and saying they're doing a yard move, and they genuinely think they are, but it doesn't meet what FMCSA has told the enforcement community a yard move is, but there's no definition in the book for a driver to go look at so that they understand what qualifies as a yard move. Like, there's little things like this that could clean up personal conveyance so that people are using it properly, and then that would really call into light the improper intentional use, and we could get a better understanding of the scope of that problem if we could clarify the accidental misuse of personal conveyance.
I see some common ground here in a way, because Todd, you mentioned that the association is not against there being better defined rules with some of this. The issue, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of this, Adrienne, from folks out there, is when you start bringing up, hard and fast limits, right? Like a 2-hour limit, prohibiting off-duty use of personal conveyance and so on and so forth. Is there, I guess, Todd, and maybe we can ask you this to start with, is that accurate? I mean, you said better defined rules, fine, understandable. It's the limits maybe that we're looking at and saying, hey, we're maybe going a little bit too far here?
Well, let me tell you a story from the Wayback Machine.
Love it.
Back when Ray LaHood, former Secretary of Transportation, when he was a congressman in Illinois, and this goes way back. I can remember stories, or a story that came out of his office, and he served on the Transportation Committee, that there were at least a couple of drivers in Illinois that would deliver in California and come back empty. And basically they said, well, this is personal use of our vehicles. And of course, that, this would have been a long time ago, but I mean, there are efforts where folks basically sort of fudge the system for their own ends. Now, because there was no way that we would be on board saying that's okay. Having said that, there are instances that will come up for if you're again a long haul trucker and you do it for a period of time, stuff happens. I can remember in my own experience driving, I remember leaving my load and trailer at a receiver in Idaho and bobtailing down to Salt Lake City so I could catch a flight home for Christmas. So
that's a pretty good reason.
And that was a pretty good drive.
Yeah.
But it made sense to do that because of airline connections.
Sure.
And of course I had to drive down and then I had to drive back. And that was totally personal use of my own vehicle. And, would I want the regulations to be so inflexible that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that? Well, of course not. And, neither would anyone else. So, again, it's we want a system that's not abused, but at the same time, it has to be workable.
Right.
And it's hard to write those kinds of rules, isn't it, Adrienne?
It definitely is, but I think it's worth trying to do so that we can get some clarity for the drivers and the enforcement out there, so we can get folks. Because again, we see scenario after scenario where a driver is using it improperly, unintentionally. They don't understand the rule, and the rules should be written clear enough for folks to understand them, and for enforcement to consistently apply them, and to kind of draw back on the personal interpretations and what do I think is reasonable. What do I think? There should be some clear lines. And again, we may not get it to a perfect place, but I think that we can agree that there are areas where we can definitely improve the definition. And, we do understand the concerns about putting a cap on it, and what does that mean for, folks who drive out west, and it's just bigger out there, right? But,
yep.
We also do see every day blatant abuse of personal conveyance and folks who are driving well beyond where they should, well beyond the time they should be driving. We know, that the driving task is fatiguing. And, we want to make sure that folks are getting the time to, we can't force folks to rest, obviously, but we want to make sure they're getting the windows to get the rest that they need. And so we do believe that by putting a limit on it, and I think my membership has currently settled on 2 hours, as what we'd like to recommend to FMCSA to consider. Obviously, FMCSA considers it and takes everybody else's input too if they decide to move forward on this. But the idea is that if you put a cap on it that is reasonable, and it kind of hopefully allows for most of those extenuating circumstances, then it limits the ability of those bad actors to extend their drive time in ways that are unsafe.
Speaking with Todd Spencer of OOIDA and Adrienne Gildea of CVSA about personal conveyance, a conversation here between the two of you, really about where you see eye to eye on this issue, and maybe where you don't see eye to eye on this issue. I guess as we come in here, I'm kind of curious, Todd, from your perspective, listening to Adrienne, listening to her points there, and Adrienne, I think you make a lot of good points. But Todd, when this petition, and Adrienne, you are going to file this petition at some point in the near future, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, we're working on refining it, and welcome input, obviously, as we continue to work on it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you, Todd, is that, when this comes in, OOIDA obviously will be providing some input on it. Just based on the conversation here, can you kind of preview maybe what that's going to say, and how maybe you might try to nudge CVSA into making some changes and providing more flexibility that you've talked about?
Well, we will participate in, in the comment part of it, both with CVSA and with the agency when it gets there. But at the same time, Adrienne, I think there's a meeting coming up just next week, isn't there?
Yes, sir. I fly out tomorrow morning at 8:30 to head to Denver for our annual conference.
Yeah, and will this be a subject of conversation there?
I don't believe it's on any of the agendas currently, but obviously you've been to our meetings, Todd. Anything's fair game if somebody wants to throw it out into the room.
Well, yeah, and by the way, that more and more as there are more economic interests show up at these meetings, it concerns me more and more greatly all the time. But I should point out that we will have people at that meeting next week. I know Louis is probably on his way there right now. So at any rate, and a couple of others. So we try to provide input everywhere that it's needed. And the part of the challenge that I think we are both aware of is that there are so many scenarios that sort of defy logical, a logical direction, so to speak, about saying, well, you do this and this and this in this situation, because the situations change, and I can remember well. I talked to a driver not all that long ago who was in a truck stop, and he was out of hours. He was there taking his break, and he's trying to rest, and there's some jokers in the parking lot, and every time he gets about ready to get a good sleep going on, they shut off his reefer.
Oh, no.
So obviously he goes out the door and sort of lets them know that he ain't all that keen on them doing that. But he's not persuasive enough to convince them, and he's not big enough to whip them all. So his only option is to go someplace else, because he has no other option, or at least none that I'm aware of. Now, if there's somebody he could call, Adrienne, and they would come out and remedy the situation, I'm sure he would be more than happy to do that. But that's not very practical. So he ends up because he's talking to me because he's got stopped and got written up for it. And, doesn't feel like it's right. And, I'd have to say that I don't agree. I agree with him. Mm-hmm. A lot of this gets down to just simple common sense. And I guess I'd say officer judgment. And officers are going to insist on having their own judgment, right, Adrienne?
Well, I think they want some discretion, and we believe they should have some, but I also think we want to make sure that the regulations are clear and that they're being, because what we don't want is for, Officer 1 to think one thing and Officer 2 to think the exact opposite. I mean, the example of, do I have to drive backwards to the restaurant or can I drive forwards to the restaurant? You survey our driver committee, you'll get different answers from the different inspectors, and I don't really think that's appropriate for industry because they don't know which inspector is going to stop them, right?
Yep.
So we need an answer from the authorities on whether or not which is it, and then we all at least know the answer, and folks can know what they can and cannot do.
And that sort of touches into the subject of officer training, which I know you all provide.
Yes,
right?
Sir.
And but not every. And now, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I hope you will. But not every officer that's going to come into contact with a trucker is going to be actually trained according to CVSA protocols, correct?
Well, that's true. You get traffic and regular officers and state troopers and highway patrolmen and everything like that, not CVSA certified folks. They can stop a truck for traffic enforcement purposes, but if they're looking at your logbook, they should be CVSA certified.
Yeah.
Now, Adrienne, you'd mentioned the 2-hour limit. Todd, I'm curious, is there a time limit you feel could be placed on it, or no? What are your thoughts with that?
Well, I can tell you that my personal experience with going from Idaho to the airport in Salt Lake City, that was more than 2 hours.
Yeah.
So now
Can I ask a question on that? Sorry to interrupt, but Todd, I'm just curious because this is another thing that we really love some clarification from FMCSA on. So when you drove down to the airport, did you have a load with you?
No.
Right, so you were just driving your truck, right? You were driving your truck like I drive my Mazda.
Absolutely.
And so, from our perspective, you're not moving a load. You're not in commerce. You're not a commercial motor vehicle. So you're not regulated at that point. So those hours shouldn't count. And you've got to have some way to put them in your book, right? But that's not you're not regulated at the time. You're driving your truck like I drive my car. And so that's something else we need clarification on because, I think we all agree if you're just driving the truck and there's no load associated, you don't qualify as a commercial motor vehicle if the truck is big enough to be one, but you don't qualify one if you're not in interstate commerce. And so we need more clarity there as well because that's one of those situations where, I was talking to my inspectors, you're not a commercial motor vehicle right then. However, we have guidance from FMCSA that says if they pull you over and want to inspect you, that they can require you to put them to on-duty time and so that we can do an inspection. So there are just areas where the guidance and the regulations seem to kind of contradict one another. And we just want to get some clarity. And so in your scenario, the 2-hour cap wouldn't apply to you because you're not in commerce.
Todd?
In our thinking,
yeah.
We would need FMCSA to say that too, obviously.
Well, I'm going to say, okay, tell that to the cop. So, because
Well, if I can get FMCSA to agree, I will. I'll put it in our training. But we got to get the agency to clarify for us.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the dilemma. And, as I mentioned early on, now you may have better data, and I hope you do, but the most recent stuff that I was able to run across showed there were 23,000 violations written for that last year. Does that sound about reasonable to you?
It sounds, I had it here somewhere. I was trying to see if I could find my piece of paper. That sounds like it's probably in the ballpark. Where is my little sheet? So it sounds like it's probably in the ballpark, I think. But what I would flag is that those are the violations that were found, that were identified to clearly be violations of personal conveyance. And, the training that we do in the direction from the agency is that if, benefit of the doubt goes to the driver, and abuse of personal conveyance can be really tricky to verify and confirm, especially if they're not actively operating under PC at the time when you inspect them. And so I do think that the actual occurrences are higher. It's just that those are the ones that we can prove beyond, for sure. I mean, I think when I look at false logs, personal conveyance hovers in like the mid-20th in terms of number. It's like the 24th or the 29th or the 27th most frequently cited driver violation.
Yeah. Would it make sense to you, or the scenario that pops in my head is that when I'm doing this trucking, and when people are doing this trucking right now, there is no line on the logbook that says personal conveyance. You're supposed to annotate it in some fashion, and
right.
And would it make sense to have a different line for that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a conversation for that. I think that there's a conversation to be had for personal conveyance. While affiliated with a load, I'm on my trip, but I'm going to go grab some food, or I'm going to go pick up a prescription, or I'm going to go do any of the number of things I'm allowed to do on my off time, right?
Yep.
And then personal conveyance, I'm not regulated. Like, I am not currently affiliated with a load. I am not a commercial motor vehicle. I think there's a discussion to be had for a couple of different duty status, or not duty status, but designations within the what you're using the truck for. Because again, like we talked about, if you're driving to the beach for the weekend and you're driving your truck and you're not going to a load, you're not hauling a load, you're just driving your truck, but you're just driving your truck and you're not regulated at the time.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to distinguish from that too.
Todd and Adrienne, I want to jump in here because we are running a little bit short on time, but I want to give you both a chance to just kind of give your final thoughts here, because this has been a great discussion. I think it's really been good in terms of seeing where you're both coming from on this issue, and the differences and the similarities of the things you see eye to eye on. Just final thoughts here, Adrienne, as we kind of wrap things up here about this issue.
Yeah, well, I want to say first off, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this and hope we get to do more of this in the future. This is fun. But just to kind of wrap it up from our perspective, we are looking at this issue and trying to do two things. We have two goals. We want to clarify the regulations so that folks understand the rule and that enforcement and industry have the same understanding of it, and we can all kind of move forward on the same page. And we want to combat misuse and abuse of it, where people are using the designation to extend their drive time, which, again, is not the norm, but it is out there happening, and it makes the roads less safe. And I think we can all agree we want safety on the roads, and so we're trying to do those two things: clarify the regulations and combat misuse.
Todd, last word.
We'll
give you a few words.
Well, sure. There was one thing that we actually both mentioned in passing earlier that I sort of wanted to just comment on. I know, among the frustrations for certainly some members that drive someone else's truck is the carrier policies that say no PC. Well, that's all well and good for the guy behind the desk to do that, and the safety manager or whatever to do that stuff, but it's simply not practical even for drivers that drive for those companies. So, I would think a driver in that situation, regardless of what a company policy is, if you need to drive the truck for personal use, that should certainly be permissible under the law, because again, because cops don't enforce company policies. That's up to the company to do whatever they want to with that.
Right.
And I guess probably where we're going to end up being is that if it is your vehicle and you're using it for personal use, regardless of what you're using it for, that should be permissible, because, I know we have members that have no other vehicle at home. I mean, they have. Doesn't make sense for them to have a vehicle at home in a lot of instances if they spend all their time on the road.
Right.
So if they're going to do anything, they're going to be sightseeing or any of this other stuff, they're going to drive a truck. It makes sense to do that. So that's kind of where we're going to be. And again, I hope. I would think, and certainly in some of those instances, Adrienne, where some of these things would be data queued, and you'd have an opportunity to basically explain your situation. And I would hope that would, in the instances where there was a mistake made, they would be resolved that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly, Todd. I think in the instances where, that it was just a personal move and it had nothing to do with their job, and they're just driving their truck, like I said, like I drive my Mazda, that you're not regulated, and the data queues exist for that purpose. And so, yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that.
Much more to come on this issue. Adrienne, we will take you up on that offer to maybe have this conversation again after the petition is filed. But really appreciate your time, Adrienne. Always appreciate your time as well, Todd. And we'll get you two together again here in the coming months to go at it again. But thank you very much to both of you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
At TruckStop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on TruckStop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
House products provide your diesel with total performance and protection. Use Diesel Defender for a full system cleaning. Start treatment early with Diesel Treat to prevent gelling all season, and protect yourself from winter emergencies with Diesel Lifeline. Stay moving with House.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. The Guilty by Association Truck Show is right around the corner. This Thursday, the biennial truck show will get underway in Joplin, Missouri. To talk about the show, I brought in Jordan Sedgwick from OOIDA's marketing department. Jordan, how's it going?
It is going so great. I'm so excited to be here.
Did I say your last name right?
You did.
Oh,
Sedgwick.
good.
Like the county
Sedgwick.
in Kansas, as I've been told by many. So there you go.
Never heard of it.
There you go. Yes,
Okay.
Sedgwick.
As I was reading, I was like, oh, I meant to ask this question before. But I'm glad I got it right.
Yes.
Also, as I was writing this, biennial and biannual, not the same.
Okay, do explain.
So I wrote biannual, and then I was like, better Google that, as I say to myself more than once a day. And yeah, every 2 years is biennial, and then every twice a year is biannual. I thought biannual meant both, which is kind of confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like sometimes it can, but apparently Google told me biennial is every 2 years.
Well, it's very confusing. It's like, are you paid bi-weekly or bi-monthly and then you start thinking about it too much. And it's like, I don't know, is it every 2 weeks or is it every... So it's the same thing. It's very confusing. I trust you. I believe in you.
Okay. Well, I went to Google, so.
Thank you, Google.
People say they use Chat GPT, and I'm like, I'm asking my questions to Google. I don't know if that's good or not, but anyway. So this truck show is one that OOIDA has, I think, typically always had a presence at.
Mm-hmm.
What is the plan for this year's show? What can people expect?
Sure. So we're looking a little bit different this year opposed to our previous years. If anyone's attended, if they attended in 2023, that was our 50th anniversary. Very exciting. We had a couple exciting things going on. But this year, we are going for a new look, a new tone, actually new locations. So the strategy, the theme this year is celebrating the drivers. So we are celebrating all our truck drivers out there, member or not. We're very excited about the end of truck show season and celebrating everyone there. With that, we will have 2 locations. So normally we have our booth that is in front, or the truck that's in front of 4 State. We will still have that location, but we'll have a hospitality tent. And really cool with that tent, one way to celebrate the truck drivers is we will have free food and drink. We will have some free swag for them, a place to sit down, some activities. And we'll also still have our tour truck. We will never forget about Mr. Marty driving that tour truck.
Couldn't forget about Marty.
Absolutely not. So he will actually be across the street over at the Petro, right there in front. And we'll have a lot of similar things that we'll be offering at the hospitality tent, just a different location in case there's people attending that aren't able to come across the street or they miss us. They can always hit up Marty over the tour truck. So really excited about that opportunity. It's completely different this year. We are also selling road gear. So that is our store that we have internally with OOIDA gear that people can have at both locations. So you want a T-shirt, you need a hoodie, a hat, come see us at either location and we can get it for you.
Awesome. Now, you're someone, you go to a lot of truck shows with Marty, some, right? Mm-hmm. How does this show compare to other shows?
It's as the young kids say, it's the vibe. It is the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone that's attended MATS, the Mid-America Truck Show down in Louisville every year, that is a more professional type feel. It's for connecting. It's finding partnerships. It's businesses, things like that. This is more of a true celebration. When we work with Brian there at 4 State, Brian Martin, wonderful person. So excited to see him again. He even says it's almost like a fair. Yeah. It's a fair for truckers. There's going to be burnouts. There's going to be monster trucks. There's going to be derbies. It's full of activities and fun. Obviously, we're still focusing on offering our services and products to anyone that needs them. But again, the focus is on celebrating them and just having a good time.
Yeah. You're also someone who's on the phone with members, and, you know, a lot of the staff that go deal with members every day. How beneficial is it for our staff to go and to be able to talk to members and, you know, just truck drivers in general?
Sure. So it's extremely beneficial. I think it's a really cool opportunity for any employee to be able to go and meet our members face to face. And yes, it's one thing to talk to them on the phone and go over the needs that they have, but to see them by their trucks, at their rig, showing off what they have and meeting them face to face and just having that connection, I think is extremely important. I think that truck shows and events are an amazing opportunity for us to meet these members face to face.
And what can someone get, you know, if they come up to the OOIDA booth? I mean, I know we usually have people there from insurance, can explain that and other things that we offer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we will have a truck insurance person there to talk. We will have someone from Compliance Connection where we manage driver files, maintenance files. We will also have someone from our life and health department. And really exciting this year, this is the first time that we're going to be able to sign people up for identity theft or occupational accident. Oh, wow. So any questions about that, please come by the tent. We'll have Susan there. And we'll be able to sign you up right then and there, which is really cool.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. I know in 2023, we both went. And one of the things I noticed, the coolest trucks are at this show.
Yes.
Talk to me about that, you know, as someone who, I know you and I both don't have a trucking background, but so amazing to see these trucks and, I mean, what they can be.
Yes, 100%. I think my favorite one from 2023 was right in front of our truck. And it had a full fish tank.
I was going to just say, do you remember the fish? I don't think I could ever forget the fish tank.
It was so cool.
And they were real fish, right?
They were real fish, and they were happy, and it was temperature controlled. So even being, because I don't know if it was right by the engine.
It was close, I feel like. Yeah. But yeah, no, they had it all.
It was so cool. And it's just these beautiful rigs that they have all shined up and pretty. But yes, that fish one really stuck with me. I tell everyone about it.
You have to wonder, like, what was the thought process to be like, we want to do something really cool with the truck? I just can't even imagine who was like, Let's try a fish tank.
No idea. But if they're there this year, I will come back and talk to you about the fish tank, and I will ask them the
thought
history
process there.
Yes.
And I think I might have actually talked to them a couple of years ago. But yeah. And then talk to me. I mean, Brian, he's there. He's the one at Forest State. I mean, he's a treat.
Oh my gosh. I love Brian. So Brian and Bryce Martin, they are brothers that own Forest State, started it up. They're the ones that actually put on the truck show. We sponsor with them at the show. But they are just some of the best down-to-earth people just in general to work with. And I'm just so excited that OOIDA's worked so closely with them.
And OOIDA will be doing a giveaway, right?
Yes, we will.
That.
We will be having a giveaway, right? And it'll we have a QR code that's right in front of the tent, and anyone can enter 18 years or older. You do not have to be an OOIDA member. We will be giving away, the winner will get a Shoemaker battery charger, a detailing kit, some mud flaps, and OOIDA gear. So it's valued around $499.
Wow.
We'll choose the winner next week, and you have 7 days to claim it, that whole spiel. But really excited to be giving this cool package away, especially with that detailing kit. I know we're going to be seeing these cool rigs, and I feel like that would be really beneficial for some of these truckers.
Yeah, and these rigs are cool, but they are clean.
They are so clean. You see them down there. I mean, it'll be 6 a.m., and they're shining their wheels, and I am so impressed.
Yeah. How much do you enjoy? I mean, obviously you're there to talk about OOIDA, but just like meeting some of these truckers, their wives, their partners, like it's so fun.
Oh my gosh, it is so exciting. One of my favorite parts is at any show, but especially this one where there's so many truck drivers there. I mean, there'll be thousands and thousands in attendance, is when I do get a break away from the tent or the truck and being able to take the golf cart and just go drive around these cool trucks and stop and talking to these people and seeing where they started, why they're here, where they're taking their next load to. I mean, all these guys have to, and women have to plan out their loads. Are they going to deliver after the show? Are they going to go before? I mean, the logistics behind it, it's amazing talking to them to see how they make it work out.
And when the association, preps for, this truck show or any truck show, what is the goal?
The goal? It's different for every show.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a trick question.
Sorry.
And I feel like you talked to my director, Katie, too much. She's all about strategy, but no. So ultimately the goal is to meet as many truck drivers as we can and just to get to know them, to see if or how we can help them out. Whether that means, obviously with the services and products, we have truck insurance, we have all those things, we have fuel card, but other things. I mean, obviously we started in 73 advocating for these drivers, and we need to know the issues out there. So one of our number one things is we always come back with just literal pages of handwritten notes from staff on what truck drivers are talking about. What are the issues? What do we need to work on, because you're the reason we're here?
Yeah, that's super helpful. All right, Jordan, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
And if you're at GBATS, of course, come say hi to you.
Come see me.
All right. And for anyone who is attending GBATS, you can also, of course, swing by the OOIDA tent. Scott Thompson will be there. If you see him, be sure to swing by and say hello. If you missed our earlier conversation on personal conveyance with OOIDA President Todd Spencer and CVSA's Adrienne Gildea, you can check out our show on OOIDA's YouTube channel. Had a really great chat with them about that, the different opinions that OOIDA has and CVSA, and where the future might lay for that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to stay safe. Have a great day. And if you missed any of our shows, you can tune into OOIDA at youtube.com. Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
You got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. You can call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message, or send us an email at podcast@ooida.com, and we might just include it on the show.